do you think of when you think of the future of lean leadership?
The best way to predict the future is to create it. But what we're moving to is actually more leadership in its proper form, which is the actual ability to develop everybody in the organization to be leaders and to be innovators and to be problem solvers. Definitely, we're moving more towards, I think, the need for that approach.
My advice for those that are looking to, project themselves into the future is start being who you want to be then. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Lean Solutions Podcast. I am Shayne with my fantastic host, Catherine. Catherine, how are you today?
I'm good, Shayne. I'm just trying to match your energy here. I'm good. How are you, Shayne? I don't feel that energetic.
I have been accused at times of being, I have to put these words correctly, of being aggressively positive. There are times when my energy is just a little bit too much, and I'm still learning. I'm still young in life and still learning how to bring that down. I am excited about today's topic. And to start us off and to kind of give a little bit of a hint of what we're going to be talking about, Catherine, I want you to imagine it is 2035. So 10 years from now, not terribly far, 10 years from now, 2035, what are lean leaders going to be doing? Like, are they going to be having some kind of holographic Kanban board? Are they going to be doing virtual Gemba walks like on the moon or like across, continents? It could be. I don't know. What do you think of when you think of the future of lean leadership?
Big question. Well, okay, I would scale it back a little, maybe no moon and, outer space stuff. Hopefully, I'm not. Are you ever ready for that? But look, I do think we've had the conversation before about AI and technology, and we are going to have to get up to speed with doing things differently. That there is no doubt about that. We cannot keep working and implementing and trying to be lean in the same way we always have. That's for sure. However, I do think we can't forget our foundations, our what's really, really important in terms of respect for people and continuous improvement and a focus on the foundations. And we that's, I think, what's happening in the world today. We're getting so focused on this shiny stuff, like you just said, that I think there's a danger of us forgetting the foundations of leadership and lean. I really do. So I think it's a very good question to actually bring us back to reality, Shayne.
Sometimes, ask my wife. Sometimes I do need to be kind of brought back down into like the here and now. So let me ask a question then to go along with this, to kind of follow up with what you were saying. And I totally appreciate where you were going with that. What do you see as possibly some key skills, mindsets, those kind of things that you think will define effective leadership, moving forward, and how can organizations start cultivating those kind of mindsets or key traits or whatever, however you want to define it? How can they start cultivating that now?
Yeah, so, well, definitely, I mean, you're probably picking up on what I just said there. Adaptability, flexibility is massive. That is a mindset we need to have, in that we can't keep going and expecting to roll out lean and treat people the same way and I suppose expect changes in the way we've always done them. So definitely being adaptable, looking to see what resources are out there, what can help us speed up the way we're doing things right now, and learning about those things and implementing those things and being ahead when it comes to the knowledge about all of these things. So I think that whole adaptability mindset, and that probably links to growth mindset, which a lot of people are probably familiar with the work of Carol Dweck and growth mindset. But this idea that, it's possible to do more, it's possible to be more, it's possible to be better. And that's going to be really important, because I think a lot of organizations could choose to stay stuck in, we're okay, we've been doing fine. That's not going to work over the next 10 years. And in terms of how we, I guess, try to bring in those mindsets now, I think these whole cycles that we use in lean need to be done more effectively. So when we think about plan, do, check, act, I think we're very good sometimes about creating this plan we're not so good at the doing, we're even worse at the checking, and we're even worse at the change in the acting part, right?
Right,
So I
right.
think we need to get better at our using the actual cycles that we're supposed to be using, and not just, you know, leaving it to chance, or taking some sort of ad hoc approach to this. It's not a time for ad hocness. It's a time for structure. It's a time for bringing in this. I think that's what I think. So yeah, they'd be kind of my top two mindsets, along with maybe this idea of intellectual humility, where we have to understand and put up our hands about what we don't know, because there's so much we don't know. And I think we have to say, every leader out there, every lean leader out there needs to be able to say that to the teams they're working with, because it's going to be a joint effort to change and improve over the next few years. That's just my thought. I mean, where do you, what do you make of all that? Would you think?
I mean, it's so alongside of what you just mentioned, because where I'm thinking is, and I'm just going to phrase it in just a little bit different way, just a scientific mindset of experimentation and exploration, like that has to be it. And you know, that's really what the PDCA, the Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle is all about. It's experimenting, it's exploring, it's using scientific thinking, not just, like you mentioned, you know, ad hocness. Is that a real word? Like, I love this now. I'm trying to start using this.
People know what I meant, though, right?
Right. Yes, exactly. And I want to also add, like, there's components that leadership has been doing really good so far, but will even more so continue with AI, with technology, with the things that make the world smaller and smaller. And what I'm speaking to is global citizenship. This embracing of different cultures, and I'm going to say diversity. But when I say diversity, I want it to be a more broad term than diversity in just the color of the skin and the nationality. Diversity in culture. And that could be in the same country. You have so many different cultures, you know, with the different generations and everything, they have different cultures. So that global mindset of starting to think, hey, how do I best lead this kind of culture? But the other diversity would be diversity of thought. So that, I mean, I see this as the best way to move forward is to get the best minds together, and they can't all be the same, because I only have that limitation. You just mentioned, how did you say, intellectual humility, or something like that? You know, knowing that, hey, I have a limitation, and if I surround myself with people that think just like I do, then we all have that same limitation. So those global thinking globally, you know, I'm taking more diversity in, and I want to say the last thing that I was thinking about, ethical and social responsibility. I mean, I you know, what kind of impacts will the decisions that we make today impact grandchildren and people further on? I think it's really short-sighted for business to not start thinking that way, to not start projecting that way, as again, the world becomes smaller and smaller with all the technology that we have, and all this going on. We have to be aware of and be stewards of the decisions that we make and the impacts that we make, you know, wherever it is. So that's my quick soapbox there for the things that I think about in regards to, you know, the traits and the mindsets. And you know, I also followed up that question with, hey, how can leaders start cultivating these now? I mean, I don't have a great answer for that, because I don't have a Stargate in my bedroom, so I can't jump to the future and see this. I don't have that holographic or that virtual Gemba on the moon. But what I do think, because the future is so, I want to say sensitive, in that it's not set. It can be changed by how you act, how I act, how we all act. So my advice for those that are looking to, you know, project themselves into the future is start being who you want to be then.
Yes. What's that saying? The best way to predict the future is to create it. That's kind of what you're saying. Yes. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, no, definitely agree with that. And so much of what you're saying is making me think we focus on leadership a lot in our conversations, right? As the whole world does, focus on leadership. But yet, when it comes to practice, we focus on leaders and the role of leaders, leading the team and all the behaviors and tasks and roles that come with that. But what we're moving
Right.
to is actually more leadership in its proper form, which is the actual ability to develop everybody in the organization
Oh,
to be
yes.
leaders and to be innovators and to be problem solvers. And everything that you've said and I've said really, I think, emphasizes the need for us to move to that way of working right now. And not for leaders, and it links with intellectual humility, to think that they need to be the ones to change everything and, shape the path to the moon. They don't. It's a partnership approach, really, with the leader absolutely having,
Right.
certain responsibilities around the guidance there and the people development piece. But definitely we're moving more towards, I think, the need for that approach. It's becoming
Yes.
clear to me.
Yeah, developing of
Yeah.
people. That's
And,
fantastic.
and then what about Shayne? So we talk about lean on the Lean Solutions podcast because that's what we all do, and that's what we all know. So how can lean principles, I guess, evolve in your mind to stay relevant with everything that's happening out there in terms of technological advancements and change in the workplaces? What do you think, or do they need to evolve? The actual, I guess, way that we teach lean, the way that we, I guess, the focus of lean when as you think about
Right.
it now, do you think
Right.
that needs to change?
I think I don't know that the principles need to evolve, but our application of those principles, because if we were to just label off the principles, the principle of value from the customer's perspective, I don't know that needs to evolve. The principle of understanding the value stream and visualizing how you're getting whatever the customer wants, how you're going to get it there. The idea of push and pull, perfection and respect for people, which you mentioned before. Those are principles that I don't see. I don't know that those can really evolve. I mean, our application of those principles are what I believe are going to evolve. I see and our understanding shifting in what the customer really values. And the more things change, especially with technology. I mean, remember back when we were kids, when before there was really much of the internet, we just had stores you actually had to walk into. And now we have a society where what the customer values is, I just want to click a button. Like I want to click a button and have it delivered to me. I want to be able to check on my phone, where's the UPS guy? Where's the delivery guy? Oh, he's 10 stops away. Like those are the things that we value now that weren't valued before. So just understanding how that shift happens in regards to the principle of value from the customer's perspective. Another one that I can think of is the idea of real-time data collection. As we're talking about value stream and visualizing how the customer's need comes through our system back to them. The more technology enhances and advances, the more we have access to this real-time data to be able to see where the bottlenecks are. And I think that principle is a value stream and visualization is definitely going to need to evolve and be enhanced with more technology.
I do, and I do think there might be something in what you're saying about the evolution of even the principles, because the basic principle will stay the same. But even when you think about the customer, like value from the customer's perspective, we're living in a world where customers don't know what they want.
Right. Come on now.
You said it at the beginning, like we're getting hit with things we never thought would ever be invented or seen, and then they're presented to customers, and customers love them, but they didn't come up with them, most of them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we're living in a world where innovation has to be so strong for companies, I think, to be competitive and to do well. And we need, obviously, the people on the teams to be innovative. But I don't know if traditional lean values innovation as much as it does problem solving. So that would be my one kind of way of looking at the principles and kind of going, how do we need to tweak those or think differently in terms of that. Now, I could be wrong. I know it does value innovation. I know that it values adaptability, same way as agile, but I guess that's just been my experience with it and how it's been taught. I don't know. I could be wrong.
Yeah, and I will. You made me. You kind of stirred up some other thoughts in my head, and we spoke about this just a little bit, just a couple minutes ago. But this idea, I think what can happen, what I fear is as technology advances, that what will end up going as technology goes up, what's going to end up going down is the desire for perfection, the desire to continue to strive. We've made it digital, we've made it automated. We don't need to worry about, all of the experimentation and trying to figure it out. We'll just let the computer do it, or the algorithm do it, or, whatever, the machine, do it all. But I think it's Jamie Flinchbaugh who has the podcast or the book or whatever it is, that people solve problems. So having that, making sure that doesn't get left in the dust, as we're moving forward and as leaders move forward and think about, what they're going to do in the future. So yeah.
Agreed. Yeah, so I mean, it's going to be an interesting 5-10 years. Who knows? Maybe nothing will change. Maybe it's just
I used to watch the Jetsons as a kid, and I never got now we have Roomba, but still it wasn't that housekeeper that rolled around and made all our meals and everything, and I don't have a flying car. Come on now, people.
No, change is a lot slower often than we think, but I guess that's the uncertainty these days. We're not sure of that anymore either. So I mean, when it comes to leadership, I guess there's lots that we need to take into account. I guess we have to look at, first and foremost, in my mind, our own leadership of self first, because I believe if we don't, I guess, work on that and work on, I guess, being a good person, working on our own skills, working on our own attitude, it's going to be very difficult to lead teams through the change and uncertainty that we're seeing out there, so we do need to, I think, focus on that. And then we also need to focus on, well, how do we work best with our teams to, I guess, see change and innovation happen and manage lead. But what do you think in terms of people who are leaders or who want to be leaders, and the strategy that they should adopt to be able to lead in the most effective way in the current climate? What do you think leaders should be saying to themselves now in terms of their own approach?
That's a really good question, because I'm seeing some of that shift now in I'm kind of moving away from, and that's one of the things I love about Lean, is it's taking us the next step past the Industrial Revolution mindset of how we did things with a command and control, which worked back then, and it was an incredible leap forward in innovation that the traditional or classical, I guess, business model. But now we're shifting into things where I am happy to say that my perception is it's so much more human centric. Like you mentioned, leadership isn't just about manning the ship; it's about investing in your people. So I see things, I see things like transparency, there's whether we go American football or, English football, soccer, however we want to call it, because we're both from different places, but you can be a really junior league player or a team and have one really great player, right? And that one really great player can take you so far. But when you get up to the pro level, it's no longer about that one really great player. Just get the ball to that, to the star player. It has to be communicated. There has to be some transparency that, hey, this is where we're going. This is how we're doing things. And I would love to be able to see this fostered more in leadership and in their strategy, in disseminating that information and giving people ownership in where this is going. So transparency, I also think of empathy, and having that, again, human centric, like the people that we're working with, the people that are on your teams are not just machines and robots. Like they have lives, they have values and joys, and they have dreams, and they have something to offer that most likely has not been tapped into yet. Like that's the beauty of human potential. is it just continues to grow. So that having that empathy and that desire to imagine with other people what they could be. And for the last thing that I want to mention, because we've talked about it several times, is value. Looking at the value, from the customer, but also understanding that really your MVPs of your organization are your employees. Yes, customers are customer is king. It's what's driving it, but your MVPs, the people that you should be spending almost even more market research on, is how do we tap into the human potential that's right here, that our employees are really what's going to get us to what the customer wants.
I agree. And I think that's again sort of a change in the principles of lean as well, in that focus and who we focus on. Totally agree. And I think you were talking there about transparency and openness and empathy. And they're all, I guess, skills, competencies that leaders need. I would say that even just this coaching approach, this ability to spend time with people, the ability to understand them, understand their strengths, their areas for development, help them to understand what they need to do to develop themselves. That's the real role of the leader now. It's not to make all the decisions. Decision making is becoming more centralized. It's becoming part of what the team does, and the leader's part of the team. So it's a very different way of looking at the role of the leader now, and obviously there's other approaches. You still need leaders to be the ones to bring people together, sometimes to make the decision at the end after listening to everybody. That's all absolutely fine. But the way in which all of that is done is definitely changing. And for that reason, I think leaders just need to keep learning. They need to keep developing themselves, and organizations need to understand that, leader development does not mean these one-day courses or these Mickey Mouse, online courses that they sometimes sign people up to and tick the box to say, ooh, leader development, we've done that. No, it's much deeper. It's looking at the competencies that are important for the role of a leader, and it's working with the person on those competencies internally, manager to manager, mentor to manager, coach to manager, and working on these over time, all the time. That's my interpretation of leader development, and I think we fall down there hugely when it comes to leader development in organizations. People are not getting this. They're still looking for that tick box approach because they just don't know what else. And also you've got the issue of, well, who's going to do the work? Really there should be an understanding. If you report into somebody, they're your manager, and your manager is the one person responsible for your development, and they make that happen with you. So I think there's a long way to go still for that to happen, but it's not difficult. It's not difficult by any manner or means. So definitely the skills, and then I think how we treat people, we often hear now about, work-life balance. I don't really believe in work-life balance as such. I don't think there is a perfect balance you can achieve. I do believe in well-being. I do think it's important for leaders to understand, in their one-to-ones with people, talk to them about their well-being. How are you feeling in work? What can we do to help you with your mental, physical, spiritual, social health, whatever it is? And we need to prioritize that well-being to get people to a level where they are performing really well and able to innovate and with energy and, bring their full selves to their team. So I do think in terms of practical steps, that's the role of the leader these days. It really comes back down to spending time with people and developing people. And I do think that's where we need to go back to if we want in 10 years' time to have an organization full of innovators and bright, energetic, healthy people, because the ideas are going to come from people, or at least the implementation is. AI can give us some ideas, but it can't do the work. So I think it's looking after our people. I really do, Shayne.
That's awesome. I agree. We're on the same page there. Mm-hmm. You mentioned balance, and I want to take a little shift in balance. How can leaders balance, in the future, moving forward? And the future is anytime, past today, on into infinity. But balancing the short-term goals with the long-term vision. How do you see any of that changing or adapting? You mentioned kind of adaptivity and agileness to be able to do it.
Yeah. I think this is where actually, if lean is done right, we can do this and we can continue to do this. So for example, I think where lean has the advantage is in the way it's done through Kaizen, right? So when we have a Kaizen and we involve the people doing the work in coming up with improvement ideas, and we bring them together and we say, go, great idea, go do that. And we take that whole Toyota production system where it first started approach to empowering people every single day in their work to come up with ideas and then to implement those ideas, right? So you've got that side of lean, which I think is totally workable for the next 10 years, and it's the way it should be, and it does work, and we know it. So we've got Paul Akers talking about 2-second lean, you know, and that's, it's sort of, you know, that is the future in one sense. I think we're also going to have the other side, which is the more strategic side, which is the more longer term thinking about the organization. It's where leaders need to have this strategic ability, systems thinking, to look ahead, join the dots, understand that not everything is a quick fix. Not everything can just be done through a Kaizen and say, great, go off and do it. We need to bring people together. We need to understand processes from end to end. We need to be able to, you know, like we've always done, I guess, but it just may become more important to put the structure on this, as I said in the beginning, if we really, really want to stay ahead, and if we want to bring in the right technologies, and if we want to standardize our processes properly before we bring in this new shiny technology, which is happening in a lot of places. I do think we're going to have to balance the short term with the long term and get that balance better, working better in our organizations. I think it's off at the moment.
Yeah, that's where my head went as well. It's funny you should say you mentioned Paul Akers, because I was thinking, you know, in regards to short-term lean goals, small and many is so much better than few and long. Like, you know, having really small things that we can do, lots of those really small things you're going to get better progress than if you're just taking, you know, a really long approach. But I love what you said there about systems thinking, in that we have to also understand, how do these improvements, these small improvements that we're making, how do they impact the bigger system? Because without doing so, you may make this improvement here on, you know, in point C in regards to A through F, but down the stream, you know, it messes things up. So understanding, having that foresight to be able to say, okay, if we fix this, what are the impacts, both upstream and downstream? What are those going to be? Because that's more that long-term vision of what you're talking about. And one of the things that I try to bring up when I'm working with clients and whatnot is the idea of, hey, let's just fix what matters. You know, not every problem needs a solution, because we have limited resources. We can't fix everything, but let's try to fix the things that we can, and let's fix the things that matter. And I would even give, you know, so I don't know if this is right or not, but I'm going to give it a kind of a priority assessment here. You know, what matters most to the customer, then what matters most to the employee, and then what matters most to the business. Now, I am not a big business person. I don't have lots of people under me, you know, so I could be way off. And if so, please comment. Please send us your feedback. If we're a little bit off and you're finding it, you know, different experience, love to hear that as well. But I really appreciate, hey, let's look at the small, how does small play into the big, and let's just try to focus on that which really strategically moves us further ahead. Let's just fix what matters to the customer, to the employee, and then to the business.
That's true. That's true. And yeah, I think sometimes we only focus on, okay, what matters most that we know about, that the data is telling us about. So often we're reactive to our approach to changing or improving something, and our kind of long-term, short-term goals as such. They're reacting. And I think this is where it's really important to have both, I suppose, leading and lagging measures. And I think oftentimes we'll have the lagging measures. So we'll look back and we'll say, well, how were our profits last month? What was our losses? What complaints came in? What defects were there? What was turnover like? So we'll look back and we'll kind of take a sort of a reactive approach to the problem. We go, and in Lean, I think we're sort of taught to do that. Even if you look at Lean Six Sigma define the problem first, right? So we're
Right.
taught to look at the problem, but then I think this is where we need the leading measures, which are the forward looking measures to help us just plan to do more innovative things that will prevent the reactions,
Yes.
right? So things
Yeah.
like, even I spoke about leader development there. What are we doing? What are measures have we got to tell us that, where our investments in leader development, we're making investments, and those investments are maybe changing the perception of leaders' competencies in, of perception of their own competencies, right, in their role. Okay, great. So we've got
Right.
this measure. A lot of people would go, oh, sure, what good is that? That's not telling us anything. But actually, there's leader development can be linked to, changes in profits and bottom line metrics over time. But I think we don't take them seriously enough. We don't look to see
Mm.
things like daily huddle participation, customer engagement. We don't look at the positives, we focus on the negatives. So I think there's a lot we can
Interesting.
learn from taking the positives and doing more with that, and maybe not looking for results out of it, just focusing on it as a sort of a platform to jump from into,
Yeah.
innovation. So yeah, I think both those measures are important for me as well when it comes to short term and long term thinking too. Oh, look, we could talk about it all day, but I think we always use the word balance, and we're always looking for balance. But let's be honest, we're never balanced. There's no such thing. We're just doing our best to look to see what could we try differently to help us, maybe
Right.
do it a little bit better. That's kind of the
Yeah.
way we are, isn't it? Yeah. So we've talked a lot there actually about skills and about leadership. And one thing that didn't come up, I noticed, I didn't say the word, but actually we've covered a lot of terms linked to it, is emotional intelligence.
Mm.
And emotional intelligence is kind of like what we talked about there before, the ability to know yourself, lead yourself. So the pillars of emotional intelligence are self-awareness, self-management, so the management of your own emotions, social awareness, understanding what's happening around you and in the people around you, and then
Right.
relationship management, right? And then you've got empathy, which a word you did use, and motivation, right? So these are the pillars that emotional intelligence is built on. And you hear very different perspectives on emotional intelligence. You'll get some people poo-pooing it. Honestly, it doesn't matter. Business can go on. We don't need to look at that soft stuff. I hear a lot of
Right.
that.
Right.
And then you've got the other side where people think it's the most critical skill to develop in people. It's going to become the most critical skill out there. What are your thoughts on emotional intelligence, Shayne? And what about the two sides?
Oh goodness.
Yeah, what do we do with emotional intelligence, and should we be harnessing it? Should we be investing in it, or can we just get by without it? And what's the point?
I mean, my heart goes with the human centric side of things. I've mentioned it before, and I will continue. Um, we're human beings, not human doings. We're human beings, and we need to be aware of that. We need to respect that, to honor that. Um, and there are a lot of ways that can play out. But I definitely I don't know which side is more important. I don't know if, well, okay, I will say that those that poo poo emotional intelligence, I'm going to make an accusatory statement and say they probably don't have any. So I,
Okay.
I
Yeah.
don't know. I'm sorry. I'm just making a judgment call. I'll apologize for it
And
later.
or they think they could think they do,
Or
but then
that's
obviously,
true. That's true.
yeah,
They could think they do. But just
yeah,
trying to understand, like you were mentioning, hey, understanding who I am and what is it about me, the kind of that self-awareness, self-reflection, those kind of things. That's huge, but also trying to put myself in the feet of other people. And
mhm,
and I think it could grow beyond just wanting to understand you, Catherine. If I was your manager, supervisor, whatever, just wanting to understand, okay, so Catherine, has kids, she's got a husband, she's got ailing parents, whatever it is, trying to capture those kind of things to give, understanding in regards to maybe why you missed this deadline or that deadline. But I think emotional intelligence also can speak to, okay, so what are Catherine's goals? So Catherine said that she would like to advance in this company. okay, to advance in this company, she needs to have more opportunities to solve problems. So emotional intelligence would say that if there is an issue, and this is just an example, and I'm spitballing here, but if there's an issue that Catherine's having and you bring it to me, Catherine, I turn it back to you and say, hey, what do you think? You know, you take this, and the best you can, I will support you. I will give you the resources you will need. I will move things out of your way. But what is it that you think? So that my emotional intelligence is saying, hey, I understand what Catherine wants. I understand how she's going to get that is by experience. Let me give her that experience. Instead of always fixing, always firefighting, always being there as the hero, I step back as the lead support and allow you to learn, to allow you to fail. And I have heard some pretty crazy one really crazy experience, and then I'll just shut down, or I'll just shut up here. But there was an executive who had an assistant who drafted something up for them, a letter or whatnot, and brought it in, and the executive read it, looked at it, and then handed it back and said, you can do better. And did that like 3 or 4 times. And when I first heard this, as I was hearing this story, I was like, man, what a jerk. Like, didn't give any ideas as to what was wrong. Maybe he mentioned, hey, I see there's a couple errors in here. You can do better. But what the principle behind it, and whether we're right or wrong, how he did it, and I'm just giving, the Cliff Notes version of really, cut really, really quick idea of it. But the idea behind it was, I'm not going to fix this for my administrative assistant. I'm going to allow them to figure out the way, because that's more important in the long run for our relationship than it is this piece of paper that has to be perfect.
Yes, that's a great example, because so when I studied the EQI 2.0, it's a psychometric EQ assessment. And when we did that piece of work that you had to do to be able to become a practitioner, I learned something. I learned that having a high IQ doesn't mean you're high in everything. It doesn't mean you're high in empathy, plus you're high in independence, plus you're high in stress management. It doesn't mean you go through the 15 or 16 competencies and you're high in them all. What it means is you've learned to balance your competencies out. So it might mean that you might actually, let's say, be low on empathy and high on assertiveness, but EQ is being able to maybe bring the empathy up and bring the assertiveness back a little. So it is about, like, they described it as this mixing board, which like a DJ mixing board, where you've got all your, which I thought was amazing. You've got all your EQ competencies listed out, and then you're constantly moving the buttons up and down based on the situation to understand what to do in that situation. So it's fascinating to learn about it, and to learn about how you can actually adjust your IQ and develop your IQ, because a lot of people think you can't, Shayne. But you actually can once you become
Thank you so much. There's hope.
Yeah, so you can. So it's fascinating that, when you get, I guess, leaders who've never thought about this before, who've never thought about the importance of emotional intelligence, and then when they start looking at their own behaviors and how they handle a situation, and are able to put a language and an understanding around that, using words like empathy and assertiveness, I think they start to see, oh gosh, I understand now where I'm maybe strong and where I need to develop. It opens up so much, I think, in terms of self-development for people. And I always say that, developing yourself as a leader is self-development, personal development first, not professional development. It's about working on yourself. So it's amazing. It's an amazing area. And even if you think about, the idea of problem solving in Lean, which we have to do a lot of, obviously there is a lot of that. But if you imagine a person with, let's say, low emotional intelligence trying to run a problem solving session, I mean, they're probably going to look at the data, the facts, they're probably not going to take into account, the human factors in all of this in terms of the problems. Right. I mean, that's going to be so bad for relationships, and how's that going to lead to any change, because the conflict is going to get in the way. So there's so much when it comes to Lean and respect for people, so much that we depend on, I think, our emotional intelligence for, and I think it's a really important thing for every leader to understand.
Agreed. Yeah. Okay, all right, so we have crossed a whole bunch of terrain. We never really got into the holographic Kanban boards. We didn't do the virtual Gemba. Dadgummit.
Yeah,
Maybe next time. But
Stop.
I do love this discussion and just the the excitement and the exercise of trying to project, man, what could it be? I wonder what is still going to be there. What's going to get us there? That's been a lot of fun. I've really appreciated the time that you've given us as listeners, and Catherine, that what I've been able to absorb from you and kind of interact with. That's been super fun in talking about this.
Same shade. I think we complement each other because I do think you're probably a lot more creative than me. That was obvious from your first statement. I'm usually the one where I'm going, right, let's come back down to earth. So your first statement kind of upset me a little bit, Shayne. I'm never in the sky.
Okay. So fair enough.
Leave that going there. Can't handle it.
Right. Fair enough. Well, we've come to the end. Thank you so much for watching us, for being with us, hanging with us. We hope that this has been enjoyable. It's been fun for us. And most importantly, we hope that you were able to at least get some things to think about as you're looking into and projecting, what is it that I'm going to be in the future? How can I future-proof, or how can I make sure that I'm remaining useful and relevant as things change? So thanks for stopping by.